Madison, Wisconsin today for Talking Racine. In a few minutes, we're going to be going in the room down the hall here to talk with Green Party presidential candidate Jill Stein. So stick around. Well, we're here with Jill Stein today, presidential candidate for the Green Party. I'm Dr. Ken Jorgen, your host of Talking Racine. And geez, it's nice to meet you. It's good to finally see you. I've been watching your career for some time. This was your second shot at the presidency, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it went a little better than the first time?
I would say so, yeah. I mean, we wound up tripling our vote, and we have more automatic ballot access now in more states than we ever had before, and we got candidates and new chapters, coming out of the woodwork. So it's very exciting.
Balloting is a big question. That's a big part of why you're here today.
Absolutely. I'm here to help launch Count My Vote, because our votes are not being counted. Sure.
Okay, my name is Fabi. I'm from the Will and Bobby Show, and I have one question for Jill Stein. 2016 was the year of independent candidates, Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. As you said before, we do need a movement. Is there any way possible that Jill Stein and the Green Party would ever, take control or start going towards the Democratic Party and kind of like become the progressive voice in that party? Because there's obviously a lot of progressive people in that party, and would love to have you in there. Would you ever consider bringing, if it's possible, and if it's not possible, why wouldn't it be possible?
So here's the thing. People have been working on that, at least since 1960.
Mm-hmm.
In the 60s and 70s, there was actually a whole movement called the Realignment Movement, which took the power of the Civil Rights Movement, which was a world-changing movement, together with the labor movement, which was still strong at that time, and said, hey, let's bring it together and let's create a more social Democratic Party. It failed. It floundered on the Vietnam War, actually, because you had to support the war in order to be a critic in good standing of the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. So it floundered. Every effort since then has floundered. Bernie Sanders was not the first progressive to be sabotaged by the Democratic Party. And we saw, in the light of day with those leaked emails, we saw exactly how the Democratic Party had engineered that. Not only that, but they had also engineered the rise of Donald Trump as part of their strategy of lifting up the most nutcake Republican candidates in order to make it easier for Hillary to get elected. And even that didn't work. And it didn't work because the party has unfortunately been thoroughly corrupted by big money. It is, and the Greens were the only party in this election, the only national candidate that was not controlled by corporate money, lobbyist money, or a super PAC. We have a firewall against big money. We are a small donor phenomenon. That's the only way to do it. And actually, it should be publicly funded, and we're working on that. But in the meantime, it's a small donor thing. And Bernie may be with the program, but he cannot, somehow leave the party, unfortunately. He's the right guy in the wrong party. And we had invited him to come on board and get behind a party.
I saw that, yeah.
If you want to have a revolution, you can't just do it with a revolutionary campaign, because a counter-revolutionary party will kill that campaign and then disappear it. Where is Bernie now? Unfortunately, it's Nancy Pelosi and it's Chuck Schumer who are leading the party. And the party is, we're still bombing 7 countries and on our way to more. And it's still the war machine. It is still all about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was pushed by the Democrats. It is still about healthcare, which is completely unaffordable, especially for working people. The gentrification of our communities and letting developers just run roughshod over our housing. Student debt, which, again, the Democrats won't stand up. They bailed out Wall Street. Why not bail out the victims of Wall Street? It costs far less than the bailout for Wall Street. We can fix this stuff, but it's not going to get fixed under a political party that is wedded to predatory banks, fossil fuel giants, and war profiteers. We're going over a cliff, folks. And I think we don't have time to keep reenacting the same failed strategy. It's like beyond the Hail Mary moment now. We got 2 feet over the cliff, and we're hanging on by a thread here now. We got to start doing what we need to do. Our lives now really depend on our taking action and taking very big action. This is not a time for little things around the margins. This is the time to really stand up for an America and a world that actually works for all of us, that puts people, planet, and peace over profit. This is not rocket science. This is basically the agenda of our campaign. It's a Green New Deal that fixes the emergency of the climate at the same time that it fixes the emergency of our economy, which hasn't gotten better because the jobs that came back are part-time, low-wage, insecure, temporary jobs that you cannot, keep a house, or an apartment with, let alone, support a family. We need a Green New Deal. We need to end student debt and make public higher education free. We need to restore public education as well, and not squander our resources on this privatized charter system. Schooling is not about a choice. It should be a right. An excellent school should be a right for every student. We need health care as a human right. We need to end mass deportations and create a welcoming path to citizenship, end mass incarceration and the war on drugs, and end this system of racist violence and racist policing, and finally have a foreign policy based on international law, human rights, and diplomacy, and get back half of our budget. Instead of spending it on wars that make us less secure, let's actually spend it on the things we need for security right here at home. This isn't rocket science. This is about
Do you
standing up.
think that there's a need to create a federal election process where it's standardized, at least on a national level, across the entire United States?
Yes, we certainly should have minimum standards.
Is there any kind of a mechanism or movement that's going on right now, or any process by which you think that can be accomplished?
At this point, the action seems to be mostly state-focused. It's kind of hard enough working at the state level, but I think right now people want to raise the bar at the level of the states, and then maybe we can begin to talk nationally after that.
Well, right now, all of the states are in charge of their own election processes.
Yes.
But in terms of the federal process, I would think that the federal government could impose some kind of standards on the election, which are completely absent at this time. It's pretty haphazard, which I'm sure you can give me a lot of war stories in that regard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Under the current, the upcoming Department of Justice, I think it'll be all we can do to keep from further backsliding. I think this is not a Department of Justice under which we are going to make a lot of forward progress.
There's something else I wanted to talk to you about too, and that is the debate process. Now, I remember when I was much younger that it was run by the League of Women Voters.
Yes.
And it was an impartial, nonpartisan process. And if I have my history right, it was after 1992 when Ross Perot took a significant share of the popular vote that the Republicans and the Democrats, seemingly working together, made the process so difficult that the League of Women Voters just threw up their hands and said, we're done, we're out of here. And since then, it's been the Republicans and the Democrats that have been running the process. And it's virtually impossible for a third party or independent candidate to get into the debates. Is that an accurate summation?
Yes. I can't exactly confirm the dates for you, but it is absolutely true. In fact, it was after Jimmy Carter, I think. It was I believe it was in the Carter election where a candidate from Illinois, there was an independent candidate from Illinois who actually triggered this because Carter refused to debate him and Reagan actually went ahead and did. And that sort of began the whole controversy in which the candidates of the mainstream parties started calling the shots. They did not want to be challenged by independent candidates. And
it seems like a conflict of interest to me for the major parties like that to be running the debates.
Exactly.
And excluding everybody else just at their whim.
The League of Women Voters actually quit the debate commission.
Right.
I thought it was the late 80s when they quit. And what they said when they quit was that the two major parties had really taken over the whole process to the degree that the debates were now a fraud being perpetrated on the American voter, because the two parties were so much in charge, not only of deciding who would be in the debate, but also what kinds of questions would get asked, because they pick the moderator. They determine also which press will be allowed in to ask questions. Excuse me. And they also determine what audience gets to be admitted, which tells you something very insidious is going on, that they are basically setting up a dog and pony show to create sort of an engineered debate in which the audience is cheering for things that really are not meaningful to people outside of that audience.
And they're not even debates, really, when it comes down to it. It's more like a conjoined press conference.
If even, it's like a rigged press conference.
Yeah, well, I hate to use that word rigged, but it's probably true.
Yes. So I want to just share with you that the point of the recount, in my view, it's not just to be sure that we have an accurate vote, but to make sure that our votes really matter, that they are part of an election system in which we are casting a meaningful vote. We not only have a right to have our vote counted, we have a right to know who we can vote for, and for that we need a People's Debate Commission. We have a right to vote without fear, that is, in a system that allows us to rank our choices, not feel like we have to vote against the guy we hate the most.
That would be a tremendous development. I think they call it instant runoff.
Instant runoff, or now we call it ranked choice voting, because it says what you do. You rank your choices knowing that if your first choice loses, your vote is automatically reassigned to your second choice. So you don't have to buy into this lesser evil voting, which has really kind of taken us over the cliff. The politics of fear has actually delivered everything that we were afraid of.
Yeah, well, I think the barrier there is that a reformation of the system is dependent upon those people who are currently in office to reform the system, and they are the beneficiaries of the system as it now exists. So getting them to move on this is at least difficult and probably impossible. So I think it would require more than likely a movement from the ground floor up.
Well, exactly. But the same thing can be said about any objective of the movement. Whether the objective is, to have a meaningful vote, to be able to vote in a ranked choice system, or to have health care that you can afford, or to stop
we can relate to that one, I think.
Or to stop spending half of our discretionary budget on these wars that are only making us less secure, not more secure. It's like we will not get any of these fighting one issue at a time, which is why I have become sort of late in life. At the young age of 50, I became an active member of the Green Party after the Democrats killed campaign finance reform and publicly funded elections, which would have gotten the money out, thank you, and let the people back in. It was the Democratic Party that killed it in my home state, which said to me, we need a different kind of politics here that's fighting for us, that allows us to come together for exactly what you've said. We need that bigger agenda here for people, planet, and peace over profit and all that goes into that if we are going to fight. Because it's not like they are so numerous, but they are very powerful. They have a lot of money, and they have institutions on their side.
Absolutely. I mean, just the fact that Trump won with a minority of the vote, that should tell people that the power is not based on the vote right now. Something is very, very wrong.
Why these kinds of questions and these kinds of so-called innovations or genetic improvements and things like that, they need to be looked at very skeptically, and there needs to be very strong ethical and moral discussions about where are they going, as well as ecological and so on. When you mess with the genome through even the kinds of genetic engineering that goes into genetically modified corn, for example, there are huge questions there, even in so simple a thing as that. Questions that are not answered, and there are real liabilities. Our ecosystems are in collapse right now. We are in the 6th great extinction right now. According to the scientists, we may see half of species again eliminated by the end of this century. And if we are going into a great extinction, it's goodbye, everybody, because you don't survive a great extinction if you are larger than a squirrel. So, there are really important questions here that have to be asked when we start messing with the genome or nuclear power. Science needs to be scrutinized in the public interest and really taken out of the domain of regulation by those who are profiting from it, their lobbyists and their political servants.
Let me ask you a personal question now, and it still has to do with energy. Is there anything new to report on the Dakota Access Pipeline or any of the charges that have been leveled against people, yourself included, for participation in the water protection process that was going on out there? We've talked about this on our show on Racine.
Great.
Yeah.
So as you know, it's really a microcosm of our strike, our crisis, our struggles.
Mm-hmm.
We are fighting for democracy. We're fighting for human rights and indigenous rights. We're fighting for our water, and we're fighting for our climate. And they're all kind of rolled into one right there in Standing Rock. And it's very important that we stand up and we struggle and we fight. There's been a temporary victory, but who knows how long that's going to last.
Right.
With the new regime, where Donald Trump himself has investments in the Dakota Access Pipeline. And let me just mention, that's not the only thing he has investments in.
Oh, I know.
He's got
I got one more really important thing to get in before we run out of time here, and that's a question of what is your position on mental health?
I think mental health is a good thing. I think we need more of it.
And
we need much more
you have
of
been
it.
exposed to it at some point in time.
It's kind of a dying breed. It's missing in action.
Yeah, but there are many, many people who are struggling with mental health
Absolutely.
issues.
And I think, our mental health crisis is really, it's the tip of the iceberg. We have a health crisis. We have a crisis of human rights. We have a crisis of security and of a social safety net. And people who are struggling with mental illness, are really the canaries in the mine shaft of a system which is really in collapse in so many ways. And I don't just mean our healthcare system. I mean our community fabric, our housing, our jobs, and so on. This is why, in my view, we need a political party which can bring these struggles together, because at the end of the day, these are political. They are about power. They are questions about what happens to our resources. And are we going to squander those resources on the 1% who's now fully in charge of both political parties and all three houses of government? Are these the guys who are going to call the shots? And I just want to cut to the chase here. Occupy inauguration is coming up on the 20th of January, and I hope you will join us, or at least tune in or be a part of this protest that says we do not consent to a government of war, austerity, of surveillance, of mass incarceration, of endless student debt, of a healthcare crisis. We do not consent, while that money is being hoarded in the hands of a 1% that is just off the charts in how wealthy it is. We're the 17 members currently appointed to the cabinet have the wealth of 1/3 of the entire American population put together. This is just obscene. This is not okay. We do not consent. We are standing up to resist now. And remember that when we get out and we stand up, governments change. And I would only point to South Korea, where millions of people got out to protest corruption and the involvement of their president in some kind of an influence peddling scandal. Millions of people went out on the street. That president is now being impeached for influence peddling, which I assure you is a drop in the bucket compared to what we got coming into the White House. Or look at, under Richard Nixon. What did we do under Richard Nixon? Under one of the most repressive and conservative presidents ever, we brought the troops home from Vietnam. We established the Clean Air Act and Clean Water Act and the Environmental Protection Agency. We got worker health and safety protections under OSHA.
It's pretty astonishing what happened under that regime.
Women's right to choose under a very conservative Supreme Court. Why did we do that? Because we knew that the lives of our brothers were at stake, especially people of color, Latinos, and young people. Students were getting sent to die to Vietnam. So we got out there like our lives depended on it. Our lives now depend on it. Again, whether it's climate, whether it's endless student debt, whether it is immigrant deportations, or just being targeted because of the color of your skin. Our lives are on the line. We need to get out there like it matters and stand up and stand together. And we need to come together as a unified movement for people, planet, and peace over profit. That means a political movement, because if you're going to keep a coalition together, that is by definition a political movement. And I encourage people to go to jill2016.com and become a part of this movement, or go to the inauguration occupyinauguration.com and join us. Join this movement. Our lives depend on it.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank
Great
you so
talking with
much.
you.
It was
It's a pleasure.
Good to visit with you.
Likewise.
Thanks for being here.
Okay.